Hi, this is Anna Imagination with the Healing Garden. I am starting up emotional education. This is easily one of my favorite topics. It is also one of the most complex and involved topics that I have available at Triadic Healing and the Healing Garden. The reason why is because 99% of what we know about emotions is wrong. What we have been taught is wrong. So we're going to start by right off saying, under no circumstances should you ever suppress an emotion. Absolutely not the way to handle it. The first emotions I'm going to cover is anger and fear, my favorite emotions, and easily the most misunderstood. A lot of people handle anger wrong, basically. There's this understanding that the emotion anger is bad and evil. And there's also the concept that the emotion anger is the same thing as violence. And that is wrong. Anger is absolutely unrelated to violence. Anger is actually self love. Anger is the full defense system waking up saying, hey, we're being damaged and this pisses me off because I love myself. Please do something about it. Now, every emotion ends with please do something about it, from the subconscious mind to the conscious mind. The conscious mind, the conscious awareness is you, but we are taught to suppress. We are also taught to be afraid of anger, which is a problem. And we see a lot of people who are, while they are angry, they are violent, they are abusive. We might be exposed to an angry drunk. We might be exposed to somebody who's basically so hurt and aggressive themselves that when they get angry, they lash out. So, in our own experience, in our own trauma, we are associated through trauma, or we are associating through trauma, anger and violence. And they are not the same thing, not at all. They are two completely different things. Everyone feels anger. When you feel anger, that is self love coming forward. Now, there are two paths to take: the correct path that almost no one takes because we are not taught it, and the second path, which is the last line of defense, and we're not quite sure what to do, so we kind of default to the violence path. Now, the third path is just avoid anger altogether because we don't want to be violent. And that is wrong. So people tend to suppress and avoid the anger and run away from it, or they tend to be extremely violent and aggressive. And we don't want either one of those. The correct answer is communication. When you feel anger, you are supposed to access your defense system. Your defense system is actually your communication system. Your communication system has two parts to it: your voice, actually saying the boundary, and enforcing the boundary. The problem is, usually we are all abused for using our boundaries and our voices. At a very young age, we were taught that it isn't safe to communicate. So we don't default to communication like we should, because the abuser, the narcissist, doesn't want to hear our objections. They don't want us using our defense system because they want to abuse us. And they like to abuse us usually through violence. So there's this really a lot of happening here that's really been lost in communication. So we're going to start with the emotion anger. Anger is linked directly to your self-defense system. When you are received a catalyst or information from the outside world, it comes into your perspective, it comes into your cognitive core for processing. And as it goes through processing, it is either good, so we feel joy, or it's bad, and we get angry. If it's good, we feel joy, nothing is supposed to happen. If it's a negative impact on the self, we get angry, and that is when the defense system wakes up and says, hey, you have the emotion anger now because you need to step up and set a boundary. You need to step in and communicate and set that boundary and prepare to enforce it. But you have to feel safe enough to do this. In most cases, we don't feel safe enough to communicate, so we suppress or we become violent. Violence is a choice that only certain people decide to choose. Other people suppress it. Both are not healthy. Both are very unhealthy and they cause a lot of problems. Now, when you have this kind of a setup, the only solution, the only resolution is to practice communicating your boundaries, setting up those boundaries, vocalizing those boundaries, knowing what your boundaries are. I go over that in another lesson, and enforcing those boundaries. So if they don't do X, it's up to you to make sure you do what's appropriate to keep you, the identity, the individual, your perspective safe. Now, we're going to set that aside for a minute. The other part of this is the emotion fear, which is actually what's at play here. The only way to handle fear is by soothing and reassuring. That is the only way to handle fear. We get a lot of fear in, and when people feel fear, they run away, they avoid, they divert, they ignore, they suppress, or it converts to another action. This is where addiction really takes hold. Fear requires acknowledgement, validation, soothing, reassurance from you. Fear seeks your comfort zone. Fear requires your comfort zone. Your comfort zone is completely composed of what soothes you, what makes you feel comfortable and safe. It's even as simple as the reassurance that it's going to be okay. In most cases, that's all we need to hear when we are feeling afraid. It is acknowledgement and validation that you are afraid, acknowledging that your imagination is probably going off into the most improbable fiction and imagining the worst case scenario. And you just need to say, hey, I see you. I understand. You are seen. You are heard. I know you are afraid. It's going to be okay. What do you need to feel safe? Let's go over to the comfort zone and make you feel safe. And this is where the comfort zone is supposed to be used as a place of comfort and soothing to bring down the fear. But once you get the fear down, you're supposed to leave the comfort zone and go back and mingle and live and grow. But we don't do that. We become highly dependent, codependent upon the comfort zone. We attach ourselves to other things. And as a result, the fear just grows because no one's soothing the fear. They're just projecting their fear onto other people, desperate to look for that soothing and that reassurance that they're not getting. So when you have this fear, love, anger combination, suppression is the worst thing for you because you're not validating. You are not addressing fear that needs soothing and reassurance. You are suppressing the message that says you really need to be defending yourself and putting down a boundary vocally and then physically if necessary. And we're not given this information. So anger is a good thing. It is self-love. Get into the habit of communicating. Use your communicating. This is going to require fear, soothing your fear that it's okay now to talk. That's going to be a lot of what we focus on in triadic healing, is really focusing a lot of soothing and reassurance to show yourself that it is safe enough to talk now. A huge problem that a lot of people suffer with. And then once you soothe and you calm down and you reassure that fear, you give it a little bit of that comfort zone. You give yourself some self-love, self-care day, read a book, take a bath, show yourself that it is safe, and then you go back and you try again. You have anger, you use your words to communicate, hey, I don't like this. You are not respecting my perspective. And those are the words. You are not respecting my perspective. Our perspectives is what is abused every single time we are abused. We can nitpick over all the details. We're missing the point. We are experiencing perspective abuse. So it's when we go in and when we say things like, hey, you are violating my perspective. You are not respecting that I have a different perspective than you. It does a lot to really enforce, validate, and give you distance. It's okay to be different. And people need to be reminded that this is a difference and it's okay. When you say that, you're actually reassuring their fear because they see difference and they're scared, which is what we've been conditioned to do. But by saying, hey, it's just a difference of opinion, it's okay. You've now reassured them. They've identified what the problem is, and now they've calmed down. Once you get into the habit of reassuring and soothing fear, you're going to see this massive drop of tension and anger just really calm down. So fear needs soothing and reassurance, validation, name it, soothe it, reassure, empathize. That's how you handle fear. Anger, communicate, use boundaries, vocalize the boundary, and then enforce the boundary if necessary. Thank you so much. And as always, you can take a look to on my website at www.annashealinggarden.org. I have a quiz there so you can locate what your coordinates are. And that allows you to identify your coordinates, tells you where you want to be, what obstacle you have in your way, and it introduces everything you need to start the work to get you where you want to go. So again, that's over at annashealinggarden.org. Thank you so much, and may the kindest of words always find you.